Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying.
Yes, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cannon Podcast. We are glum with a last-minute equalizer on what was a fairly classic English match, I would say. It had everything. It had stop-start play, very physical side, classic throwback to some of the older matches, and ending in what was probably heartbreak after what was a really good performance from going down, I felt like. And, we did... I think not cover ourselves in glory on that goal. And it's just really difficult to take because it's one of those where you felt like this was a performance that deserved the comeback. All in all, mate, how are you feeling? I feel like every time you come on, we don't have a lot of good things to talk about. So it's you. It is you.
Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, blame it on me.
How are you feeling after 2-2?
I feel shattered. I genuinely feel shattered. I don't know if, for me personally, I haven't felt that for a long time. I think we've been very lucky, not even conceding shots recently. So to kind of go through that trial and tribulation during the matches, for me personally, I found it difficult. So I can only imagine what it must have been like for the players. That goal was, the first goal was gut wrenching. The second goal, I just don't have words to describe that for me. I just feel shattered, George.
Yeah, and I think it's especially difficult to take, especially when you look at the way we conceded, which we've dealt with so brilliantly, and that's been our bread and butter. And, I think there's a couple of people that'll look and isolate, is Gabriel strong enough? Are we looking at David Raya coming off his line too quickly? Meanwhile, in the last 10 minutes prior to that, he's come off his line proactively to really get there, even though there was an offside moment. That exact moment is what has saved, the team in two very tough moments at the end there. I didn't like the way that we surrendered towards the end of the second half in terms of trying, because I think that can happen, generally speaking, away, but you give the team impetus a little bit from that. But yeah, mate, just generally, I'm trying to go through my headline and I can't do anything other than absolutely gutting, and a really top performance when we were going down to really see some new things. And I feel like we can't enjoy and revel in some of the second half, which did have some really brilliant moments. But that first half, very stop-start, ball was rarely in play, very old school type of match and very frustrating type of match. But for yourself, mate, like what's your headline kind of walking in as we approach the international break and trying to take in this for another 2 weeks? And is it anything other than we need fit attackers?
I was going to say that. I was going to say rest, recharge, and restart. That's my headline for this. Like, we have to use the international break as a positive. We've had this. It feels like a loss. It's not a loss. I was going to say, we've got to take this loss, but we do. We have to take this as a loss, I think, and look at it like where we are right now. We are aiming to be the elite of the elite, and we have to react in the best possible way. And I think we'll probably go through in a little bit, maybe the injuries and how that has affected us, because it has. And I think you mentioned it very briefly then about how we ended the game. And I think those injuries, if we had certain players and certain profiles back, maybe we don't kind of end the game in that manner.
Yeah, it definitely felt like the team was struggling a little bit on fumes. But I want to go into kind of the first half, talk a little bit about that, because there was definitely some things that we wanted to maybe see a little bit. Very stop-start match, especially from some of the head injuries. It felt as though that Arsenal couldn't really have time on the ball necessarily. There was a very frantic nature to the game, and I felt as though that we kind of got a little bit slow in possession. Everything was in front of Sunderland when we did have the opportunity to get into the final third. It was one of those matches that I felt you almost saw the dreaded horseshoe, and there was a little bit of me, at least personally, asking for some more underlapping runs, a little bit more quick switches, things we definitely saw in the second half. But I think in the first, we struggled to really move the ball quickly enough, move the block of Sunderland a little bit more effectively. I think it was all in front of them a little bit and too comfortable from their perspective. I did want to ask you about the goal. I did want to ask you before the goal, in fact, about the Marino elbow. Where are you as far as that goes? And I don't want to make this a referee conversation, but he was crap. It's not the reason we lost, but he was crap.
Yeah, you have to address it. I think, rival fans will say you're salty or whatever it may be if you're mentioning the referee, but it's inexcusable. Some of the decisions made, like the Eze one is the first one that comes to mind for me, where it's clear as day that it should be a booking. And there are several times where Sunderland essentially just got away with persistent fouls and certain actions. The header for Marino and that head injury, for me, at first glance, like in play, I wasn't too concerned. It just seemed like Dan Buller kind of went across quite quickly and forcefully. On the replay, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but there's definite contact between the elbow and the head. Like it's 100%.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at that, and then you're looking at foul that's given for Zubimendi and a yellow card leading to the Sunderland goal, I feel that, you've got to referee consistently. And, Cesar has put this perfectly. Pawson let the game slip. And you kind of set a precedent. If you start to let these things get away, constantly, unfortunately, that's what's going to happen with the game.
It's really difficult for me because letter of the law, you see the replay, it's a stonewall pen for me. It's elbow to the side of the head. It's a foul. It'd be one of those where I don't think anybody would think that, they'd be upset at it, but we move on. And I don't think we needed a penalty to really break open Sunderland, but it definitely would have helped. And then you move on to the goal, and then it was just a game that was so frustrating, mate, because even on the foul, that was not a foul by Zubimendi, we don't react quick enough. I think Rice is kind of slow to react as far as the second ball goes, going in for Ballard to get the hit. I think he can do a bit better. It's a dead ball situation. The game stops, and I think that we're a little bit slow to react. That definitely is on us as far as the goal is concerned, but definitely not a foul. And you're in that position because of something that wasn't a foul, and you're left there frustrated. So you're there, you pick up your pieces, I think. And beyond the goal, which happened quite early, it felt like we needed a response. And the one thing that I did want to say is I didn't see the response in the first half. That response kind of after the goal, it was a little bit tepid in possession. I still didn't feel like we were making quick enough switches. It felt a little bit like Bukayo was trying to take on 2 or 3 players on his own, and the team and the ball was really well in front of Sunderland. We didn't move that block quick enough or with enough variation, and everything was quite easy for Sunderland to defend, I think, in that first half. What did you make kind of the response to the goal as far as after we've conceded? And then what were your feelings kind of approaching halftime?
Feel that first half, we had the other head injury as well. So there was, even more delay on the game. It just, that whole half, it had, Sunderland fans will kill me for saying this, but it had Newcastle written all over it. It just took me back to that game, unable to break them down, real physical decisions going against us. And just lacking creativity, unable to kind of move the ball quickly, not incisive. When the gaps were opening up, it was calling out for just quick, incisive passes between the lines. And I kind of understand why we weren't doing that and why we were trying to recycle the ball, trying to keep possession. But, unfortunately, that first half just felt stale to me. It just felt that, the halftime was needed. I think without that interval, I wonder where the game would have gone.
Yeah, it was definitely something that we needed to reset, because I think the release in the final third, it wasn't clicking. It was fairly slow, tepid, as I was saying, very horseshoe-esque, and there was a lot of indecisiveness in the final third from our perspective. I do want to change because it drastically changed in the second half, and I don't want to get away from that. I definitely was, at halftime thinking, it's too bad we don't have a Martin Odegaard here, because this is his type of game. And then I go and I think, you know what? Honestly, I just need to see the ball in play. I just need to see the ball in play, us to move the ball with a little bit more tempo, have a little bit more quick switches, and move their block a bit. Because this is the thing, mate. we don't have the runners to stretch. So asking for the team to stretch a team without the tools to stretch is going to be something that we weren't going to do. So we were always going to pin Sunderland's back five back, and it was going to be through a method of kind of quick movement across the line, underlapping runs, things like that to exploit space, because Sunderland were happy to sit back into their block, right? And the biggest thing is we did all of those things, I think, in the second half. We really came out with a different type of intent. The aggression in terms of how we were playing was brilliant. I was going to say it's probably one of my favorite comeback performances, had we managed to make the comeback complete with the play, because it was truly, truly special. I thought Zubamendi really led the charge in that aspect as far as the tempo was concerned. He was really brilliant, not just on the goal. For Trossard, where he kind of makes the quick switch out there, I just thought he was finding really interesting solutions and popping up in the half spaces, even before we started to equalize, with some really intelligent positioning and play. What did you make of kind of the response, at least from a first half that probably could be frustrated, but I thought it was one of our best kind of comeback performances, let's say, from a goal.
Yeah, I completely agree. John's put in a comment here. So describe Marino's performance. Thanks for being a member, John. I mean, for me in the first half, with Marino in particular, he was part of the problem rather than the solution. So kind of coming deep, coming into wide areas. A lot of his flick-ons were from kind of deeper areas that we don't really need that. And I've quite liked Eze's performances where he's come close to Gyökeres. He's played almost off him at times. I think that's one of the things that I noticed straight away from the second half. Eze kind of coming up forward, making it more of a traditional 4-4-2 at times. And I think that enabled us to kind of stretch the pitch. It's a small pitch at Sunderland without the runners beyond, without your Martinellis, your Gyökeres, even Martin Odegaard in terms of being able to make the pass to stretch the pitch. I think that was one of the tactical changes. But for me, I think the two individuals that stick out are Zubamendi and Trossard. I think they just took the game by the scruff of the neck. And I've got to say, Arteta's got to have some flowers for the way that we came out in the second half. But at the same time, I do have my criticisms about the changes made in personnel, especially as the game went on.
Yes, I think as the second half proceeded, I was sat there thinking that we could have used a little bit more in wide areas, like stop the ball from coming in. It was a little bit more of the case that we preferred to sit in our block. But for me, I would have rather we were a little bit more proactive with some fullback changes, where I did feel that Calafiori, unfortunately for me, was giving away far too many fouls throughout the match in general. And I felt like I really needed a Capier down that side to kind of lock down some of the entry. But also down the right, I felt like we could have been a little bit more forward with some of those runs to push Sunderland back, because they really preferred to go down, our right, their left, to whip in crosses for Broby to attack in. And I felt like we just allowed the cross to come in a little bit far too often for me towards the end of the second half. But in that first bit of the second half, it really was brilliant. And I don't even think it was just Trossard. I want to highlight Saka for having a little bit more freedom as well, who I thought had a difficult first half, but of course, he comes up again with a serious goal. Something that we needed to capitalize on the good moments, right? And, he's popping up in different areas, going towards left-hand side, having a little bit more freedom, not as rigid towards staying on the right. And it caused Sunderland problems. The movement was just generally far, far better from the team. And I thought Declan Rice had a brilliant game, but gassed out towards the end of, the second half. And it was one of those where collectively, I thought, Saka, Zubamendi, Trossard, as you say, had a really good game, not just in terms of the goal and creating separation, but he had some really interesting creative passes as well from that wide left position, was really doing a lot of defensive work to kind of fill in when he could. In terms of kind of the end of the second half, you mentioned there some criticisms as far as how we maybe responded to the last 10, 15 minutes and maybe surrendered territory to Sunderland a little bit far too easily. The change with Mascara is one that I'm not upset about, but again, I did feel we lacked a bit in wide areas. We lacked a bit of being able to push Sunderland back, because they weren't going to come through us centrally. It was going to come from either a long throw in, a cross from wide, and making sure that we were tracking runners a bit. What do you feel were some of the changes you would have preferred to see, maybe, to stop Sunderland and surrender territory? Do you feel like there's a frustration with a lack of Norgard, as far as if that's kind of the type of game that you would have wanted somebody to come in and control and stop? If we don't trust him there in those moments, how are we going to continue with him in the future with the squad? What were some of maybe your frustrations towards the last 10 minutes?
Yeah, the Mosquera one. I can understand it. It is a difficult situation Arteta's in, where you've got a bench with Max Dowman, Waneri, and this is, we forget sometimes how young even Ethan Waneri is. And I think the game doesn't suit either of them. You cannot be putting Max in a game like this, in a physical game like this. It's just, that's near on impossible. But Norgard would, for me, be a more sensible change. Like the goal itself, Robbie's goal, we're so deep. Like we're asking for them to kind of come on to us. We're asking for, inviting pressure on. And I felt, they had all the time in the world for that goal. For me, I think Norgard should have been brought on. I could see Declan Rice fading. Like I really hope he gets some rest and isn't playing full 90s again, like we see every single time in the international break, because he definitely needs a break. It's so difficult. We ended up almost in a low block at times, and that's not our game, and that's not how we've got to this position. That's not how we've gone through, without conceding for 8 games. So it's just so frustrating.
Yeah, and I want to give Sunderland their flowers for their ability to really pressure Arsenal in loose ball situations, especially the second ball, because I think as a team, they were really good about maintaining their compact shape and really forcing Arsenal to close their distances quite well. They're a very physical team that I think the reason they got so much success is I think they lack creativity in the final third, but they're an incredibly strong team out of possession in terms of closing those distances, being able to run better than probably most teams in the league, and they were able to really put us under pressure by competing for those second balls. It wasn't really an opportunity for us to get the same respite, and I think that we are a team that's one of the best at that in the league, and we struggled here in order to keep up with some of those distances being closed from Sunderland. And I think towards the end we probably needed, it was a case of, you probably need legs, but are you introducing more confusion than you can, with kind of the intensity so high in the match, and you're caught between two minds. And all in all, I don't want to draw major conclusions, because we are a team that has gone right now, what is it now, 11 or 10 games kind of undefeated in a sense in the league. This is not a crisis moment, and it is, from the neutral's perspective, a brilliant 2-2. It's just so gutting to be a fan coming on to these instant reactions, because this is a gut punch. When you concede, for me, in the 90th minute, it's one of the most frustrating things as a player, coach, and fan. It is something that everybody can relate to. And it was one of those that I felt like we were really moving towards an ability to get out of there with the points, with the squad really depleted. So I don't know if I felt as though we had as many attacking substitutions to change things, but we kind of did the hard part. We turned it around, and it was the idea to close out the game that we struggled with. And that's not something that you can critique Arsenal for and Mikel for often. So it was one of those where I'm okay to chalk it up to kind of a Premier League classic, even though it's just really gutting to approach kind of the international break. And of course, there's this whole Liverpool and City playing tomorrow, and you want to extend the league when your rivals do play each other, and you want to get those points. But I do think Sunderland are going to be a team that cause top 6 teams an issue, especially at the Stadium of Light. So it was just a really good away day performance from them, from the boys, but also a good home performance from Sunderland. I don't know if they'll drop too many points with the crowd and their ability to play with that intensity. If they can do that, I think they'll be really, really well. So I think before we transition, I would love an opportunity for us to go through kind of the individuals. But first, if you could just have a pop forwarder for some of the stats. We normally look through Scott Willis on Twitter, kind of putting you on the spot, but hopefully he's at this point kind of produced some of the stats. But all in all, I think when I have a look at the game and I try to draw some major conclusions, the only thing that I'm probably really proud of the boys for is the response from coming down a goal, because I don't think that you're going to you're going to really see Arsenal in that position very often. And it is something that I wanted to see as an improvement point from last season, because I don't think we dealt with losing game states quite well, generally speaking. So some of the changes that we saw as far as the movement, the pinning, the underlapping runs were really positive things to take away, I think, if we are to see ourselves in that game state. But yeah, it is gutting, because I think we have to make sure that, we can't drop too many points doing our bread and butter. That is something that I feel has probably let down Liverpool this season. Like, their bread and butter,
100%.
as far as cohesion has gone, has been let down. And look at where they are. You look at Manchester City as far as what their bread and butter are in terms of the possession and being able to really provide for Holland. That is their bread and butter. It's not something to be worried about for me, but it's just gutting. And we got to make sure that, we're able to close out games when we do get into this position, and we're able to be in that kind of 2-1 position. We know how to close out games, and I think we do. I just don't want to go too hard, because I know what this team are, and I know what we're all feeling, but really I wouldn't describe us as a team that struggled to close out games when we need to. It's just we were unsuccessful in this moment.
I mean, it's the first time since May last year that we conceded 2 goals. So
Yeah.
I think we have to kind of keep these things in mind, as much as emotionally, directly after the game, we come on within 5-10 minutes of the game, and to kind of articulate our thoughts along with all those emotions is really difficult. And we're all emotionally invested in Arsenal. We all want the best for Arsenal, so we have to kind of look at it subjectively. Sometimes take yourself away from that whole situation and just go, okay, where are we in the table? How have we been doing things consistently? What were the problems? How can we address them? I mean, Ivan, thank you so much for the generous super chat. He's put, a point away at Sunderland isn't a bad one normally, but the context makes this one so bad. We did it brilliantly to turn it around, especially when it was 11 versus 12 all game, but then throwing it away like that is a gut punch. And I think that's the sentiment we probably all have, George, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's how that game felt rather than the game in isolation.
Absolutely. And you can put away results like this. It is the feeling, and it's the emotionality of it. And it is the idea that, you felt like it was within the palm of your hands to a certain extent. And despite some adversity, we felt like we were going to get through again. And so it's frustrating. I think we dust ourselves off, and of course we go again. And I think we come back from the international break in a much better position from our forward line's health. And we look at being able to change games like that a little bit more. And I think there's no sense in me trying to isolate the why. The only frustration I've got, generally speaking, is that we didn't do enough to stop the crosses coming in.
Yeah.
And we fell too comfortably into our block. And that's the extent of kind of the criticism I've got. And I don't want to go too hard, because we've made a team out of that. Our block isn't bad. So it's not that it's bad to necessarily go into a block, but I do think when you're away, you're up north, you do face these kind of teams, the Newcastles, the Anfields, the Sunderlands, where the stadium really can have an effect on a player's emotion to swing games. We need to do a bit better about silencing the crowd in moments like that. But I don't think it's a team that struggles with that, generally speaking. So just a gut punch, trying to basically come up with why we weren't able to close out the last 5 minutes. And all it took was probably just a little bit more proactivity from Gabriel. Like, again, it's like, who would you like physically against Broby? Gabriel. Who would you want to be the goalkeeper to proactively come off his line? Raya. Like, who would you want to stop the cross, by the way, down the right-hand side? Timber. Like, they're there. We just couldn't do it. And I think it's just, you're going to have these kind of games. It's just about making sure they're not a cluster of results. So I don't know if you were able to pull up some of the stats. If not, we'll go through some individual performances, but brilliant as usual.
Of course,
Porter is my tech wizard, and he understands that I am tech incompetent right now. So thank you so much for pulling that in. I'll do a quick review. So of course, 2-2, our expected goals. Again, we were all due the points. We've got 2 expected goals to their 0.9. Surrendering probably a little bit more than I would have wanted as far as XG goes, but I think most of that probably came in the first half, if I'm honest, and the last 10-15 minutes. So beyond that, Shots on target are there for you to see, 7-2. In terms of outplay shots, 13-4. Again, the number of passes that we completed, much more. We absolutely destroyed them on field tilt. So really, why are we all so glum? Why? We have done the one thing that we needed to do in this match. And then, of course, I think our zone 14 touches, which is really interesting actually for me to see, because I think that's probably the story of the match. When I look at 36-10, it really was such a brilliant comeback performance in the second half, as far as what we were able to do to create space against a stubborn, very physical team that was winning second balls. And just thought, oh, I really want to be able to talk about that on the IR, because it was so brilliant. It really, really was. And then we'll kind of just scroll through kind of to the right just to give everybody a quick view of that running XG. Again, I think Sunderland, it was really that 90th minute too. I think for all of the crosses and for everything, it was really that one moment, because we really did brilliantly again from that kind of second half and 45. You can see the difference in terms of the team and where we opened up. And I am quite surprised actually that we were able to generate such a staggering difference in the first half of the second half. And like, our bread and butter is what's let us down, which is really, you got to laugh, otherwise you cry kind of vibe.
100%.
And of course, this is like the XG in the box. And I think those Ballard chances, by the way, maybe worth noting before we go into kind of your final super chats and kind of the individual performances. Daniel Ballard, an Arsenal boy, had to be the one to.
It was written in the stars, wasn't it? I think everyone had said, if you were a betting man, who would be the person that breaks the duck? Who is the person that finally, gets past this wall that we've had? And I think most people would have said Tottenham, Harry Kane. But of course, it's an ex-Hell End lad, and to be fair, he was fantastic today. He was absolutely fantastic at the end. Another brilliant challenge. He had a great game, to be fair, and I must say, as much as this feels like a defeat and it does feel awful, like, hats off to Sunderland, because I think they are the best team we have played away from home this season. Like, they were incredible. They really were. So fair play to them.
Yeah, top match. Let's go kind of 1 to 11. We'll take off the stats and we'll try to get some individual performances that we haven't really talked about. David Raya, I don't know. People might complain about him being off his line and wanting him to stay deep, but to be honest with you, I thought he was brilliant. Pretty much the whole match. And I mean, even before that, there was a 10-minute spell in which he has one an offside and one a brilliant save about his proactiveness to come off the line and make himself big quick. To me, I thought Raya had a brilliant game, and I actually don't really blame him as much as I do Gabriel for the goal and really stopping the cross coming in. So I think for me, Raya had a really good performance. I want to give you the center back pair that pretty much I felt like dealt with the physicality well over the course of the match, and in the crucial moment didn't. Where do you stand? Do you feel like, I have seen this on Twitter, so I'll ask it just to be fair. I don't agree with it, but do you feel that Gabriel does that too often at times, in which he's such a physical person, but there are moments in which he almost inexplicably works the angle to go down, or tries to kind of play the foul as opposed to playing the ball? Do you ever feel like it's a consistency pattern, or do you kind of stand more in the camp of you're going to have those moments over the course of a career, and we obviously highlight them when it goes wrong?
It's one of those things, when you play in, a centre-back role or a goalkeeper role, those small moments are picked up and magnified and amplified, especially social media these days. It's, so once one's highlighted, it's very easy to then kind of look, but you're looking at the entire of his Arsenal career, and it's blips. They are small moments, and unfortunately, they're the ones that we remember. So I think there is an element of truth there, where he does that. He looks at that angle, but I wouldn't say it's a problem. Like, look at our defensive record. We've just said about it. Conceding twice since May. So it's not something that concerns me. It's not something I look at and I think systematically we have a problem there and we really need to address it. Like, I'm sure the coaches are well aware of it, and I'm sure he is, but it's just one of those things. And I think Robbie in himself, he is an absolute machine, that we have such a physical league now. And we were well aware of that before the game. It's not, it wasn't anyone surprised that they were putting in crosses, putting in long throws. And, I think prior to the game, they'd won the most duels in the Premier League as well. So they're a very physically adept team. They understand their roles. They understand what their best course was to win this game or get a point out of it. And, hats off to them really for that.
Yeah, it's difficult. I don't want to be left with the fullbacks because I felt like it was interesting because I was definitely calling for fullback change.
Can I ask you a question, George, about the fullbacks? For the first goal that we concede,
yep.
Do you feel that Timber is positionally out of place? Does it leave Saliba with too much room? If Timber comes back inside, and then Saliba's left as the free man, so he can close down Ballard, because I think he checks his shoulder. I'd have to watch it again. I think he checks his shoulder before that ball comes back, the second ball. And I do wonder if he could close down that situation, or is that kind of a bit harsh? I don't know.
I think it's a bit harsh, but at the same token, the collective unit was slow to react to the ball coming in. So I don't know if the position was wrong, but the reaction I thought was a little bit slow because he's in the right rough area. But I think he probably doesn't cover himself in glory as far as competing for it necessarily to really dominate that first ball. But, then the reaction, the second ball from Declan and from Saliba, it's like, it's slow. It's reactive, right? Like, it's not proactive in terms of defending. So, and it comes from a dead ball situation after everybody has been up and, the line is high and now they've got to run all the way back because now you've got a foul that you didn't really think. You were really penning people in. So it's one of those. I don't think it's a huge issue because Timber's normally dead on with those things. But I would say in the moment, there's definitely an option. Generally speaking, though, I thought defensively we did pretty well. It was just a little bit frustrating in the first half that I thought Timber probably could do a bit more in the final third as far as his release, but so could the entire right-hand side, like Saka as well. The release, I think, in the final third was a little bit slow, but I think his movement in the second half was a lot better. Timber really being able to pick up some really intelligent positions, and I think he was doing a bit better to kind of at least put the ball in quicker. There was just some moments I probably would have wanted a little bit more accuracy in the crosses, and that's kind of something that we've put Thierry in to kind of improve on this season, generally speaking. But I mean, he is Mr. Consistency, so that to me wasn't a major issue. Calafiori is an interesting one because has the chance to win it, but was really frustrating me in the second half with the fouls that he was committing and surrendering the ball. And I felt like at moments he was drawing himself in a little bit too much. Yeah. But his movement and his chaos, you're looking at that. If he gets that in, we are flipping out about what a brilliant and how much of a maverick this man is, and then quoting all of the shots on target and where he is in the team as far as shots on target. So it's a tough one. The fullbacks really confused me because I was calling for a little bit of a change in the fullback areas, particularly in the last 15 minutes, because I felt like that was the biggest issue in terms of stopping the crossing and maybe getting a little bit of legs there. But and to stop some of the fouls, because I did think Calafiori towards the end of the second half was giving away too many fouls. Yeah. But again, you're caught between two minds. I can assure you as a coach, when you look at it in the last 10 minutes, you're like, does my introduction hurt or does it not? I see that as a problem, but the intensity is so high. Do I introduce somebody? Kind of like the Mascara versus Eze decision there. It's like, okay, I want defensive solidity. I understand those things, but does introducing a cold player into a high intense situation work for us? Yes or no? But moving on, I'll give you maybe Declan Rice. We talked about Zubimendi quite a bit and we sung his praises, so I don't think we need to go over him. But what did you make of Declan Rice's performance?
I think it was a real mix. I think he's been excellent recently. This was a real mixed performance. For the first goal conceded. I didn't like how he challenged for the ball in the air. Like, he didn't actually rise to the ball. He stayed, and tried to stand his base, react slowly to the ball. So we've kind of gone through that. I think, having said that, then he completely made up for it for our first goal. Saka's goal, wins the ball high. Part of me felt that the game was almost like we missed some of those rotations that we've been seeing in midfield. We've talked about it on here recently. Those midfield rotations have been phenomenal, and they've been a big part of our success recently. And they weren't happening. And I felt that at times the angles are just wrong for Declan Rice and Eze. And I think maybe the market change of Eze playing further upfield and almost playing a 4-4-2 kind of made a bit of a difference. But personally, I felt that Eze moving to the left, Declan moving to the right would have actually helped him in this game. I think that's like another change that could have possibly happened. But for me, I think it was just a mixed bag from Declan. And towards the end of the game, I haven't seen him that physically jaded for a long time. And for us to say that about Declan, that's monumental. That makes a big change in, our performance.
Yeah. Look, this is a guy that I think when the team stands up, it's normally because of him. Like he's the driver towards that. And he's really, when this team is shattered, they go, Declan, can you do something for us? They do one of those. It was difficult. Eze was a weird one. Eze, for me, had some really interesting moments of flair. Interesting moments in which he found himself in dangerous positions at the top of the box. And he's there. He's at least there in moments, but there was a little bit of a desire for me to ask him to get on the ball a bit more. And I don't know if that relationship with Marino versus Gyökeres was actually one of the biggest things. And it was less about having a stretcher for me, but more Marino really struggled actually being a reference, in my opinion, in the first half, and especially in deeper areas. It was one of those games where you're like, okay, Marino, you've got to get a goal to justify the fact that we are not seeing you play very well. And I think Eze struggled with that because he didn't really have a player to work off of. And so there was really, at times, felt kind of isolated. I think when Bukayo came inside a bit more and they ended up combining a bit more and we ended up having more underlapping runs, there was more connection. So Eze flourished a bit more when the team gets connected. But I have noticed this where I think that Eze can have a tendency to drift in and out of importance, where if we get him maximal touches, this is a guy that's brilliant. I don't need to tell Eze how to do. And I think he did actually really well out of possession today. He did brilliant in that aspect, which was something that I'd love to see because I thought that was his biggest improvement point. But I don't worry about Eze if I, as the team, can connect with him more. But there are times where he can feel almost disconnected with the team. And he gets his moments in which he is. And I think those moments happen when he's close to Saka, when he's close to those types of relationships. Eze really flourishes. And when he's got runners in and around him, when he's like the sole person to float between the lines that is asked to really dominate, that's something that, I think he can struggle with. But when he's surrounded by options and combinations and he's able to really be that intuitive player, he's brilliant. But again, I really did want to highlight the pressing because that was probably one of my favorite pressing performances from him that we've seen in the team. So it was really nice to see that growth. It was just a bit more of wanting your danger man on the ball a little bit more with more impact. And that's simply what it was. And we saw it in the second half. Like he was really central to a lot of those combinations and being open. So mixed bag from Eze. I don't think it was absolutely brilliant. I don't think it was poor, but it was one of those where I'd like a bit more. I didn't want to rhyme, but it did.
Super chat coming here from Basic Footy. Thanks very much. Eze will be holding the bench for Odegaard when he's back. I mean, this game was crying out for Martin Odegaard, wasn't it? Let's be honest. But for me, I felt that Eze's that horseshoe breaker. And I'm going to use a George phrase here. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, though I expected some long-range efforts, I expected someone to, kind of step up. And that's what I want from Eze at certain times. Unfortunately, it just didn't happen today. And I completely agree with you. The pressing from him was fantastic. That's huge growth from him. That's huge growth. That's a complete new facet to his game. Do you think he automatically comes back to the bench? Do you think Arteta tries to move him to the left, especially with Trossard's current form? He's probably our top player for GA in all competitions. I think he's on 7 now.
Sometimes I feel like I love the tactics and I am a nerd, but sometimes it's get good players on pitch, win football matches. And it's one of those where Eze is one of our quote unquote good players, get good player on pitch, get other good player in Odegaard on pitch, and watch team make good plays. Sometimes it's just that simple. And, I did want to move probably to Trossard with that because I don't think anyone's holding bench for anybody. I think ultimately the idea is to have a lot more games where we've got them both on the pitch and we've got an opportunity to like really turn the screw because they're different in so many different ways. I think Odegaard really helps us unlock things from deeper in terms of our tempo, and then once we're in the final third and we're camped out in the final third, Eze's a lot more of a maverick than Odegaard is, and so you've got the combination of that maverick recycle between those two eights. It's actually a really nice compliment for me. They fill in for each other quite well. So I just think we need to see them on the pitch a little bit more. And then Trossard is an interesting one because he's been brilliant. I am a big Trossard defender. I always like to talk about how this is a guy that consistently produces goals and assists that change the game. When we are losing or in a drawn game state, you look up the players that are most consistently providing goals and assists. Saka is one of them, and Trossard is another. Another forgotten name, Martinelli's high on that list as well. But Trossard has been brilliant, I think, all season. And I don't think it was a given, by the way. Many people criticized that contract extension. And he has absolutely proven his use to the squad. He's been really, really brilliant in terms of not just the press that we know, filling in, and he is isolated down that side. And, he's coming up with some really important outputs. So I think Trossard deserves a lot of praise. I think Trossard also was really good with his technical consistency today. That's not something that Trossard always does. But he was very good with his first touch. He was very secure with the ball, and he was really good about bringing other people into play today, and like almost picking his moments to be direct. I think at times Trossard can take the run on the outside, and I feel like I don't think you have the legs necessarily always for that. So cut back, try to work and get some connections. But he was really mature from this. So. Top performance by him, a brilliant goal, by the way. The strike is unbelievable, and he creates the space, by the way. Like, that's not, I think for me, the pass leaves a lot for Trossard to do. Like, it was a good switch of play, sure. And we switched the play well to do that. But, I mean, Trossard does a lot. That goal was brilliant. And, the way that he's able to shimmy, feint, and have that composure top end of the box, it was brilliant for him. So I was really happy with that. Kind of talked about Marino and Saka all in. I'm going to kind of leave the end for some questions. If you guys want to pop in your comments, some questions that for me and Forder to kind of talk about, and then maybe we can go to kind of some of the super chats, play those all in all, because we really appreciate it. So guys, thank you so much. You guys like, comment, subscribe, do all those fun things that, you should do on YouTube, yada, yada. As we go to the super chats, see what is left. We did talk about Marino's performance. We talked about Ivan's super chat. Forder, this is from David. I don't know if you could pop this up on screen, but Movember or the latter?
It's neither. This is just me, unfortunately, David. I don't know why. It's like a progressive thing. The beard comes, disappears, the mustache remains every time. My other half hates it if I don't have a mustache, so it stays, unfortunately. So yeah, David, whichever you prefer, mate.
And then we'll just go through kind of in order of all the starred ones. So I think from Tipsy, and we'll put that up. Let's think back to the Saliba pen versus Brighton. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
I think it's something where it will never cease to frustrate me, but I don't know. I think every fan feels this way, mate. But we are objectively one of the best defenses in the league, and yet I feel we're a maker of our own downfalls in our goals conceded, and we give away such easy goal conceded. But it's not really the case. I think it's just like the emotion of it, to be honest with you. But yeah, I do think back to the Saliba pen versus Brighton, the consistency that these officials show. I don't want to get into another officiating debate, but it's there. And Craig Pawson, I hate you.
Mate, it's probably best you don't, because I am so much on your side of the fence rather than on Alex's side of the fence. I will tell you that. I'm too long in the tooth for this now.
Yes. Yes, exactly. We should leave it there. So this is from Willoughby. We should have switched to a 4-5-1 rather than a 5-4-1. Yeah, definitely an option. And kind of a little bit what I was alluding to almost with some of the fullback changes that I wanted to see to kind of stop those crosses coming in from wide areas. Definitely felt like, that our low block wasn't the solution. But I think, I don't know. I think Mikel probably that's the first goal from Broby, by the way, in the Premier League. And
player linked to us previously as well. I do remember that.
Yeah. And
of course it was.
You know what it is? There are two things, and I want to give it credence, right? Like Isidore as well, another really physical forward that you just throw something into and he's able to compete, right? Like that is a Tottenham striker if I've ever seen one. There's this idea, okay, if you've got some physical forwards, do you block the cross? Do you block the destination? And Mikel bet on the destination, which to be fair is not something that you would like probably find ridiculous given our record and our ability to do so. But I do tend to agree. I personally wanted us to stop the crosses coming in a little bit more. So I think that switch does that. I think we already talked about basic footy in terms of holding the bench. Didn't want to go through dents. So thank you so much for your super chat. If you play Odin as a left wing, you have to drop Trossard. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a difficult thing. And I don't think that this is a given necessarily in the form conversation, but I definitely think this is kind of our best team. Like if I'm sat there saying, what is your best team? You want Eze and Odegaard on the pitch, and you're okay to drop Trossard. It's one of those things that he's in form, so he asks questions, and that's a good thing. So I don't really mind, because Trossard to be in there is because he's doing well. And, I think doing well means performing well. I think like broadly, you're going to have those two in your best 11.
It's interesting how on our left-hand side now, we've talked previously, Arteta even talked about that connection between Saka, Ben White and Odegaard, and trying not to change that too much when Timber first came in. And you see these connections between players. And obviously in the Champions League, it seems that Miles and Martinelli seems like quite a good combination, quite an effective combination. In the Premier League, we've seen a lot of Calafiori and Trossard. I have a feeling moving forward, it might be a combination of Eze with Hincapié. And that's something that we have yet to see. Yeah. And maybe that's something that starts to grow over the time and after the international break.
Yeah, that's something that I've spoken about in the pod, like being like just a very natural symmetry. You got a guy that's like a big space runner that's able to cross from those wide positions, and you've got Eze who likes the close combination. So if you've got some people in and around Eze, I think he thrives in that aspect. And Hincapié actually has a really good early release cross on him and an early pass from deep, which I really, really like. And I think that our defenders can do a little bit more of, actually, just generally speaking, releasing early into the space to run onto. It'll help Gyökeres, it'll help Eze, it'll help that front line. And I think we're just working them back into fitness, to be fair, because I think as much as I'm probably calling for the fullbacks, I also don't have the fitness picture. So maybe there was a case of, they played previously and there's one of those. I don't know. All I know is I was asking for it because I could see a little bit of the struggle happening in the last 10, 15 minutes. I think the last super chat, or last two, I think we've got from Soon, a bit salty, but Sunderland are dirty. Yeah, I did send something in the group chat where I was like, they are pissing me off going through the back of the Achilles there. I know what that feels like from my playing days, and I saw it far too many times on our players, and it really pissed me off. And of course,
funny thing is, that would have been me, George. I would have fit in perfect up front for Sunderland. I tell you that.
See, Porter, you are assuming I am cute with the technical stuff, and I am a little bit more of the Kieran Tierney aspect of, crossing a whip, big running, a little bit of England mentality. In terms of the last one, thank you for Emran CD for becoming a new member. Thank you. We appreciate that. And yes, guys, of course, you can become a new member by clicking the link down in the description down below.
George, what does the membership get you?
Oh, thank you, Porter. Thank you for that prompt. Absolutely. The membership gets you a plethora of content, of course. You've got your Scouteds, you've got your rewatches. I know people won't want to watch that, but it might be good to rewatch the second half a little bit. You get tons of other stuff, youth pods, data pods. You get your main pod ad free. You get also some random pods. Sometimes we do, of course, Miles Lewis Kelly's mom and little interviews and things like that that are for your viewing pleasure. There's tons of content. And I think right now, guys, like the Scouteds have reached at least 50 players. So it's kind of to a point that you're getting a great deal objectively, I think, as far as like some of the content, because you can go back and there's so many videos so you can do. So absolutely. Those are some of the content that you can get. Porter, tie it for a bow for me. All I want to do is scream into a pillow. I don't know if this reflection helped all of you in the comments, but this was tough. This was a tough result to go to. All in all, there's a lot of positives to draw from the match. Really gutting and frustrating. And one of those that you're just going to be maybe attribute to it just being a classic English match and nothing dangerous from a pattern perspective, but gutting.
I look at it as, unfortunately, it feels like 2 points dropped. However, we've got to wait until that match tomorrow. We'll sit, watch that match tomorrow, knowing what our fortunes have for ourselves. Take the international break off, and hopefully by that time I would have simmered down a little bit. We'll, reset and then restart.
Rest, reset, recharge, and we come back ready to attack things after the international break, hopefully with a lot more of our attacking players in play, because one of this is about understanding if you don't have an attack that's able to put off a little bit of pressure, it starts to leak into other areas of the pitch. And I think part of the problem is when you've got so many players missing from a particular department, whether that's defense, midfield, or attack, the rest of the team crumbles because they try to fill in when they can and when they should. So really, probably gutting. I don't think anything drastic from 2-2. Frustrating to kind of do this, but absolutely, I think everybody will feel better after a 3-0 against Bayern. And let's manifest that. That is what we're looking for. Forder, thank you. It's brilliant as always. I feel bad for Forder, guys, because every time he comes on, we do one of these.
It's this combination, George. It's us together. My last appearance was a 4-0 victory against Atleti.
Yeah.
So this is the combination. It's us together. We've got to do something about this. We'll change fortunes. We'll manifest that. It'll be fine, George.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just sometimes how football works. So Forder, maybe you can give everybody a chance to look at you if they enjoy some of your stuff. Where can they find you in addition to, of course, the Cannon Podcast?
You can find me on Twitter or X under Forder on Footy. You can find me on YouTube under Forder on Football, or you can find my strange thumbnails on a Thursday night for TCP Live.
And that is my favorite Forder because he is actually brilliant. Those thumbnails, by the way, he is absolute Cannon royalty in ability to do that. But guys, thank you so much. Hopefully that was good for you guys. Hopefully that was a little bit of reflection, a little bit of therapy that helped put things into context. But I think we go again. It's one of those where at least we kind of watch the weekend's results. We see how we go. We get some players back and we attack this following the international break. Keep a lookout for some of the main pod and stuff that's coming up. Of course, a rewatch. We've got content for you in the international break. A tactics corner is going to be coming out from myself. So keep in mind. And of course, make sure that you guys take a breath. It's not that serious. Go outside, relax, woosah, and we go again. Thank you guys so much. And thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. This was one kind of queue the ladies thoroughly enjoyed.
Electrifying.